And you're looking live at the brand new GHSA region alignments as we welcome you to OTR with Bo and Walker this afternoon. And Walker, how about you, man? It's a rainbow of colors all over the map of all the different regions that we do have. And, do you want to say there were some surprises or not many surprises?
Not too many surprises. I think a lot of the surprises came out of the appeals and the number in which the GHSA reclassification committee denied. I thought I think we both thought that Flowery Branch and Johnson in our area, the two schools that put forward appeals, had really good arguments for their appeal to move down from 5A to 4A, but neither of those got approved. In terms of where the regions lined up, though, Bo, as we look at the pretty map, I mean, uh, not a whole lot of massive surprises. I would say maybe some head scratchers in terms of why they decided to do some things, but things that we kind of thought might happen if the chips fell where they ended up falling.
Yeah, and you look at kind of where the chips fell, and let's start with the Region 6 4A and Region 8 4A, only because most of our teams are housed in that, not most of them, but several of our teams are housed in those two regions, mainly Hall County split again, not much of an. I don't know if we were disappointed that happened, but we kind of expected that to happen just because of the geographics of the region and where the teams landed.
Yeah, you look at the entire state in Class 4A. Of course, we kind of thought that the Augusta region would be very spread out. Turns out they include Savannah, the Columbus region, extremely spread out down here in Southwest Georgia, all the way from Columbus down to Bainbridge. But when you get up into our area, it like you said, Bo, it's kind of the same thing that we had with 6-3A and 8-3A. Just call them 6-4A and 8-4A now. Lake Lanier is kind of the dividing line. No Lumpkin County. They stay in 3A. You pick up Gilmer if you're in 6-4A. And then you go down to 8-4A. Monroe area still there. You get Oconee County again. East Jackson staying in 4A as Jefferson moves up to 5A. Um, I think our biggest question, Bo, and we've talked about this offline, is what does GAC do right here? Greater Atlanta Christian School. They appealed 2 years ago and got into this what will be 6-4A. So do they stay in the Atlanta area with North Springs, with Pace Academy, with Westminster, with Salem High School, or do they appeal to try and get up into 6-4A or potentially even 8-4A? I think GAC is the biggest question as to what's going to happen in Class 4A come next Monday when the reclassification convenes again in Thomaston.
What do you think when you look at that Region 5 4A that they're in? Last time I think the argument was, the region they were put in didn't play as many sports as they did, but now they're in a region with, Pace Academy, Westminster, as you said, in that region. Do you think they do that just because it would be an easier trip for them to come to Northeast Georgia, or do you think they just stick around?
I mean, you mentioned it. A lot of teams that play a lot of the same sports. You've got Douglas in there that plays just about everything. Stone Mountain has good programs across the board. North Springs as well. So in that Region 5, I would think that the trip is easier for them. Of course, you've got to fight some Atlanta traffic on Friday nights instead of heading north.
Yeah.
But I don't know that GAC wants to make a trip to LJ on a Tuesday night to play a basketball game. You know what I mean? Or a Wednesday afternoon to play baseball or soccer. So if I were in charge at GAC, I would be staying there, especially given that the private schools in Class 4A still going to be pulled out into their own state playoff bracket when it comes to the end of the season. So for me, it makes sense for them to stay, but we've seen crazier things happen when
Mm.
it comes to reclassification. And um, I think I know one thing for sure. I don't think they're going to get into 8-3A. Um, it would make a little more sense in terms of geography. fix. I know they've tried to get into that eighth to that region before and been denied. I think they've got a better chance if they decide to appeal. Excuse me, if they decide to appeal to come up to Dawsonville and LJ. But again, that's a really long road trip for a midweek basketball game if you're the Spartans of Greater Atlanta Christian School or if you're the Bobcats of Gilmer High School.
All right, so speaking of Gilmer, glad you went there. So last reclass, last region realignment, you saw Gilmer jump over with Calhoun in that region. And what was that, region 7
7.
3A,
Yep.
and now region 7 4A? Pretty much resembles kind of the same, except they tossed Gilmer over into 6 4A. Now, if you remember, Gilmer did play with teams like Dawson and Lumpkin and White a few years ago. They were in that region, and then when the last reclass happened, they decided to jump over to 7 3A, which we kind of all thought Gilmer might be trying to run from GHC at that point because GHC was not initially put in Region 6 3A in the beginning, and then they, of course, appealed. They won their appeal and moved to 6 3A. Now, does Gilmer stay put in 6 4A this time, or do they try to go to 7 4A? Now, here's the thing with that, though, Walker. 6 4A only has 6 teams in it. 7 4A has 6 teams as well. I don't know if the GHSA would allow that this time just based on region size.
Yeah, I think it's going to boil down to what does Greater Atlanta Christian School do, and what does the GHSA decide to do if they approve the GAC move up to 6-3A. Now they did the region reclass appeals or the classification appeals in order from Z to A this time around for in the order that they heard the appeals 2 years ago. If you'll recall, it was A to Z. So Gilmer, in theory, would have their appeal heard first before. No, actually, that's the other way around. GAC, Greater Atlanta Christian School, would have their appeal heard first this time
Mm-hmm.
around, as opposed to Gilmer, which was heard uh, 2 years ago before GAC. But as we know, all the appeals are heard, then they go into executive session and make all of the rulings at one time, as opposed to making a ruling
Mm-hmm.
for each school as they do their appeal.
So Region 8 4A, of course, ended up Bluff, East Hall, East Jackson, the new Houston School, which will open, they say, in 2027. So they were able to kind of split almost 1,000 students off of Jackson County to
Mm-hmm.
put here in the new Houston High School. Monroe area, Oconee, and West Hall. I don't see much changing there. I don't see anybody trying to jump out of that region or jump into that region at this point. So I think it might be safe to say, with a little hesitancy on that region is going to stay the same.
And if you notice on if you want to flip back over to my screen here real quick, Bo, so we can pull it up, you notice Hushton with the double asterisks. They will not be playing varsity football in 27, is the way I read that.
Mm-hmm.
So they would be playing an independent schedule, so to speak. I don't want to say a JV schedule because you'll have some upperclassmen over there at Houston High School, but won't be playing a full varsity football schedule in 27 is the way I read that. I imagine their first varsity schedule would come in 2028 after the next round of reclassification.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because obviously the 2-year contracts in the region, you will not be allowed to play a region schedule, as you just said on that. So I think that region does stay the same. You never know what could happen, who might want to try to get in and who might not. Now, let's look at some more of the region alignments, Walker. Let's roll up to – I'm going to roll up to 6A at this moment, just because it's kind of a
Okay.
6 and 7A kind of surprise a little bit. We'll save 7A for next because that's all over the place. But let's look at where Gainesville, Hab Central, and Jackson County all landed. Not a surprise, they did split those two up again. So basically, Gainesville sticks in Region 7, and Habersham Central and Jackson County stick in Region 8 with a couple newcomers into Region 8. I'm not so sure that I'm surprised by that, but from what I understand, Gainesville is not going to appeal where they were placed in Region 7 to try to get in 8, so they're just going to stay put and stay with the teams that they have played with the last couple seasons, with a couple, three new ones in Region 7.
Yeah, you look at Region 7, that's this olive colored dot right here. Gainesville, of course, the northernmost school in that region, in with Mountain View, Lanier, Johns Creek, Alpharetta, Milton, Roswell. The interesting one here is Riverwood International Charter School
Mm-hmm.
for me. You notice they're surrounded by purple, green. Purple is region 6. This green right here, region 5, and orange, region 4. Not really sure why Riverwood got thrown in there. I imagine that they will be looking to appeal to get into one of these other regions. Likely, I would think region 5 with Osborne and South Cobb and New Manchester, Alexander. That kind of makes more sense for them to go west as opposed to having to try and fight across 285 to get up to Gainesville.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then you said, like you said, Habersham and Jackson County getting thrown into the region with Walnut Grove, Cedar Shoals, who appealed to play up into 6A, Clark Central, Loganville, and Appalachia kind of not really using 985, 365 as the dividing line because, of course, you've got Mountain View that got put in with Gainesville in Region 7. So I wonder, Bo, if Mountain View will look to stay put or if they would elect to go east. I think they likely stay in Region 7, but they're kind of an interesting one. If you were to take 985, 365 as the dividing line, they would fall on the eastern side. But in terms of the rivalries that are already in place for Mountain View, it makes more sense that they're going to end up staying in Region 7.
Yeah, I would say that as well because if you look at maybe the travel time, when you look at 7 and 8, they're kind of that team, as you said, that's kind of in limbo between the two. So I mean, they could go into 8, but then they have to travel to Athens. Would that be a better travel for them as far as traffic goes? Most likely, it would be. But then again, I think, as you said, some of the natural rivals in there would, if there are any for Mountain View, would be would be good for them to stay in Region 7. Region 8 kind of interesting just because of seeing Clark Central move up into 6A, and then also kind of shocking to hear Walnut Grove and Cedar Shoals deciding to move up into 6A to play. And, of course, obviously schools do look at travel and
Mm-hmm.
then competition, and some schools look at travel that is closer and perhaps get a better gate. So that apparently is what Cedar Shoals definitely was looking to do with that because, they would have a couple schools better to go play and maybe get some type of gate out of that.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Can
in
we
class.
briefly, before we go to 7A, can we send some thoughts and prayers to Greenbrier and Glen Academy? I mean, that is a region game. And you and I both know Augusta to Brunswick is no
mm,
short trip.
no, it
So
is not.
God bless them.
And that's the thing about when you do these reclassifications and region alignments, you've got schools like that it's just impossible for them. And I could go on my soapbox and say, "Hey, get rid of regions." I've done that before, but
Last week, in fact.
yeah, last week in fact. So you see how that works out for them, where they'll travel a long way to play what 3 teams. Granted, it'll be a home and away, so maybe
Yeah.
they won't do all 3 of one season. But regardless of that, they still have some long trip times in that. But it's kind of impossible to get away from that in this current format when you get below Macon,
Yeah.
because it is so spread out in a lot of these classifications. So as you see it here on the page, you see where the majority of the teams are. They're Metro Atlanta area ish.
Hmm.
You do have some of the outliers there, but regardless, that
Well,
is, it's like when you're putting in the teams into this map. It's kind of what the GHSA does as well.
yeah.
They try to figure out where it goes. Now, speaking of trying to figure out where it goes, Walker, let's go up to region our classification 7A and take a look at region 8 and 7. And let's look at the geography class that the GHSA took here to make this map.
Yeah. So your region 8 is this bright orange. That's Buford's region. Buford, of course, the team in our area that we're really focusing in on. They end up going in a region with Seconder, Mill Creek, Tequila, Central Gwinnett, Discovery, and Collins Hill. All of those kind of make sense, but what doesn't make sense is the fact that you've got some schools further south of those seven schools that end up in Region 7. Call it
Mhm.
Brookwood, call it Parkview, call it Berkmar. And then, oh, look here, North Gwinnett, just mere miles away from Buford. Peachtree Ridge, just mere miles away from
So
Collins
close.
Hill. And somehow they all end up in separate regions. And then just to throw the sprinkles on top of the ice cream sundae, so to speak, look at Region 4. They're spread out all the way from
Mhm.
Archer, Grayson, and South Gwinnett, and then all the way over here to North Atlanta,
Mhm.
and then all the way down here to Newton High School. So um, I'm not sure if they just, because 7A has all these schools that are right around the metro area, Gwinnett County, Forsyth County, right around the 285 corridor. Um, if they just decided to throw all of these, North Atlanta, all of Region 4, 7, and 8 into a hat and then just draw them out at random, because that's kind of what it seems like. But, would I have done it differently? Absolutely. But you take into account that there are still some rivalries that they did keep in place. They kept in place Buford Mill Creek. They
Mhm.
kept in place a Grayson and a Newton High School. Those two teams have played some really good football games over the course of the years. Um, I really don't understand why North Gwinnett and Peachtree Ridge aren't in with Buford, and why Central Gwinnett and Discovery didn't make it in with a Brookwood, a Berkmar, potentially a Grayson as well.
Yeah, and we have no inside information on any of this, and we were not at the meeting, and obviously we would not be in the executive session to see how these regions are put together because we're just not on the GHSA reclass committee. So, and nor do we have anybody that can feed us information that is on it. So, all we're doing is speculating here. And when I say speculating, it does not make sense to me why North Gwinnett and Beaufort are not in the same region together. Now, there are some North Gwinnett people and Beaufort people that probably have stories about when they played and about some fight or whatever happened in Gwinnett counties against Beaufort and, vice versa and all this kind of stuff. Again, just speculating on this. This is just out of my head at this moment. So when you look at that and you don't put North Gwinnett and Beaufort in the same region when they're mere minutes from each other, it just does not make any sense to me. And whoever watches this or is watching this can call me an idiot, can say I don't know what I'm talking about, but it just doesn't make sense geographically when you see how this works out, and how if you were to take, and I did this, and I won't show you the picture that I drew with this, but if you would take Region 4, and I want you to take, if you want to do this, I want you to take Region 4, and I want you to just draw around the teams and tell me what you get. Um, don't show me the picture because I've already done this, but it's just crazy of how that works when you have the two teams inside 285 that's going to drive outside of 285 over to the east side, down 20
Past
at some
past
point.
Parkview, past Brookwood, past Berkmar,
Absolutely.
to
Absolutely.
go play Archer.
It just, yeah, and to go play Archer. And so then when you look at the map and you see it there where the orange is, as that is 8-7A. You see how that works. Now, I'll give it to them on the map here. GHSA on Region 8. It is a perfectly, could be an oval-ish looking, circle, if you want to say
They
that.
nailed the Forsyth County region.
They nailed the
Absolutely
Forsyth
nailed
County
that.
region. Obviously, that one's a little bit too easy to do, but they did nail that one. But regardless of that, on the east, let's go east of 400. Let's go to the 85 corridor. It's interesting in how they did that. And as I was saying, we know nobody that's on the committee, and we also know nobody that probably has somebody that's down there fighting for them for this to happen. So, regardless, that's the way it is right now. Who is going to appeal? We have no idea.
And the other one that just doesn't make sense, I know it's out of our area, but Kennesaw Mountain, they're sandwiched between North
Hmm.
Cobb and Marietta,
Yeah.
but they have to drive past to go down here to play Pebblebrook. So I imagine you're going to see a lot of appeals out of 7A. You saw a lot of
Hmm.
appeals out of 7A to try and get out of
Yeah.
7A.
Yep.
When it came to the classification appeals, I imagine you're going to see maybe not as many appeals
Hmm.
in terms of region movement, but you're definitely going to see a handful out of 7A once they release that list Sunday night.
Yeah, again, they'll have that meeting. They'll take the appeals on the schools that want to move into a different region, and then they'll decide on what happens. And a lot of times, some of these schools do get to move, so it'll be interesting to see in 7A how many do appeal and how many are approved to move. Because on Monday in the reclass meeting and teams that tried to get out of 7A, all of them were denied. So again, it'd be interesting to see how that goes. And speaking of denials, Walker,
I know
let's
where we're
move to
going.
4A or 5A.
5A. Yep.
5A. Flowery Branch and Johnson tried to appeal to move down to 4A, which would have been interesting in the region 8 4A and 6 4A if that had happened, but it didn't happen. I thought they had very good appeals. I thought Johnson had a very, very good appeal as well. And it felt like out of the two that Johnson might win their appeal to move down, but they did not win it. Again, there were not a lot of appeals approved to move down on Monday by the GHSA reclass committee. So with that, Flowery Branch and Johnson, as you can see on the screen, are housed now with East Forsyth, Jefferson, Madison County, North Oconee, and Winder Barrow, which is not a bad region as far as geographics go.
No, not a bad region at all. We kind of thought maybe you would get East Side in that region as well. They've been in that region before. In fact, been in a region with Lumpkin County and White County before. So would not be surprised, Bo, to see East Side maybe appeal to move over. Athens a little bit of an easier trip than driving into Atlanta to
Mm-hmm.
take on MLK, Forest Park, Jonesboro, Dutchtown. A little bit of an easier trip from Covington to go north. Wouldn't be surprised there. I think a big question to me is what does East Forsyth do? Because East Forsyth is over here on this side, on the west side of Lake Lanier. Might be easier for them to go down to a Centennial, to go down to a Cambridge, even to go down to a St. Pius if St. Pius elects to stay in Region 6. I think that's the kicker here. Flowery Branch and Johnson definitely going to stay
Mm-hmm.
with Jefferson, Madison, North Oconee, and Winder Barrow, which that region's going to help PSR ratings like crazy, especially for Flowery
Yeah.
Branch, as we anticipate them playing a region schedule, not knowing what Johnson's going to do after they lost their appeal. Still uh, trying to figure out what they'll decide to do on the football side. Soccer, they're still going to run through that
Mm-hmm.
region. They'll run through any region that their soccer teams are on. But what do they do in football? That's going to be something we'll watch coming through to the new year. But what does East Forsyth do? What does East Side do? I think those are the two schools that would greatly affect our area in terms of where teams would be heading in Class 5A.
Well, sources tell me at East Forsyth there's been no talk about making movement, and I think simply because you're going to go down to play what Marist, I think you said it there, St. Pius is in their region.
Yeah, St. Pius is right there.
Yeah,
Get
if they
Marist in there as
Blessed
well.
Trinity. So if you decided to move to that region, I don't know if that would be helpful for an East Forsyth. So I think East stays put in Region 8 4A. Now, East Side, I have no idea what they would decide to do. Again, they're kind of that team that's kind of out there anyway. So whatever decision that they decide to make will be an interesting one to make a move if they do want to move back in. Obviously, it would be like that's what they've been doing for the last, I think 4 years.
Yeah,
If we're going back, yeah, I think it is the last 4 years. Most definitely the last 2 years, but they're used to driving up here, so they could say, "Hey, we're used
it
to playing in that region. Let's stick in it."
it made a lot more sense when Monroe area and Walnut
It
Grove were
did.
same size as East Side because you had kind of that three
Mm-hmm.
teams in this area that all went up there. But Walnut Grove kind of on their own island now with Monroe area down in 4A and uh, who was the other one that I just said? Walnut Grove up
Walnut
in
Grove.
6A.
Yep.
Um, so like you said, going to be really interesting to see what the Eagles decide to do of East Side. Do they stay in Region 4 or do they try and appeal over and head up toward Athens?
I got to say, though, North Oconee usually has a pretty good boys soccer team. So that could be interesting.
It'll be
Uh,
fun for that region
yeah.
championship in soccer, absolutely.
Yeah, most definitely. And to see how that goes because Johnson just ran through 6-3A in soccer. So, uh, yeah, looking forward to that one whenever that does happen. All right, we've not mentioned 2A. 2A has some teams. We have a few teams in 2A. In 8-2A kind of sticks kind of the same as 8A Division 1, now 8AA with Athens Academy, Banks Commerce, Oglethorpe, Prince Avenue, Providence, and Raby County. I don't see any movement there. You and I talked about Raby maybe trying to jump to 7-2A, but it's such an easier trip for them to head down 365 down to 985 if they need to over to Athens area. So I suspect Raven will stick around in that region. And really, that's a region they're used to playing in. So it's like, why change now?
Yeah, it's a lot easier of road trips than a Towns County, which we're looking at the 2A map
God
right
bless
now. Of
Towns.
course, this triangle is what you just mentioned for 8-2A. Didn't put color codes on this for 2A. Um, but no, interesting to note, there are 9 regions in Class 2A. So, how is that going to affect the automatic qualifiers for Class 2A when we get to the postseason? That's going to be a question that the GHSA is going to have to answer at some point. Of course, the region champs get the automatic bids,
Mm-hmm.
but in every other classification, that's only 8. We assumed that that was only 8 bids that would be automatic qualifiers. I assume that it'll be 9 automatic qualifier bids. Of course, private schools get pulled out of 2A. And so some of those private schools, like an Athens Academy, like a Providence Christian, could win the region and steal that automatic bid um, on their way out to the private school bracket. So that'll be interesting to watch. And then we mentioned Class 1A Towns County way up here, going to be in this same region that they've been in with Washington, Wilkes, Lincoln County, Greene County, Lake Oconee, Woody Gap, I believe, also in their region as we take a
There are
look
54
at the
students.
yeah, and of course not playing varsity football, but Woody Gap does have other sports. Taliaferro County not playing football; they do have other sports. What does Towns County elect to do when it comes to football? Do they play a region schedule, back-to-back winning seasons for the Indians, or do they continue to do their own thing in the football realm and then focus their attention on other sports for the region play? That'll be something we watch extremely closely.
Yeah, that'll be definitely something we want to watch close, as you said, because what will Towns decide to do? Will they decide to play non-region again, or decide, I'm sure you can do this, but you would have to leave GHSA. I mean, to try to if one of the like North Carolina regions would allow them to play, it might be a little bit closer for them to go play in. But I think
Mm-hmm.
Towns does compete in basketball and baseball in GHSA, and they do make the drive. So you'll have to again, the athletic programs do what's best for the entire athletic program, and if it is what's best, I'm sure Towns will stick around. And I do know you said about in 2A about the 9 regions they do have. Region 9 2A is an all private school region, so obviously
That's a good point.
they're not going to take away any type of region championship from a public school. But the question is, and I have not researched this. I just assumed it was going to be Walker. Is the GHSA going to continue to say, okay, if you're in a private school in a public school region, will you take away the region championship? Like, I don't know the answer to that at this moment because, yes, you can win the region technically, but are they going to, penalize the public school that finishes second in the race? I don't know. I'm just asking that
Yeah,
question.
I'm not.
I
I'm
have
not
no
sure.
idea.
Of course, the region champs are only guaranteed one home game in the new PSR
Yeah.
system. Of course, the region champs would be
Yeah.
guaranteed a top 16 seed, but everybody's seeded
Mm-hmm.
amongst their PSR. So You would think that, let's say, Arabian County loses to Prince Avenue Christian
Right.
in a region championship game in 8-2A. Rabin County's PSR should be plenty high enough playing Athens Academy, playing Prince
Absolutely.
Avenue Christian, a resurgent
Hmm.
Commerce, a much improved Oglethorpe County, Banks County team that's going to get better
Yeah.
as well. You would think
Absolutely.
their PSR are going to be plenty high enough, plus knowing who Rabin plays in non-region play as well.
Yeah, that's a good point too because of the top 16 and the way they're going to do the region champ. So that is a good point. It doesn't really matter when you look at the grand scheme of things. Now that as we said, just to kind of review for everybody out there that may not know this, there is a change in the postseason ranking system. All classifications are now using it or will use it starting next season. So basically, what the GHSA has done, they've tweaked it a bit. They have said region champs get an automatic bid into the playoffs, but you will not get a top 8 seed. You'll be ranked among the top 16, which would guarantee you at least one home game. So that's the way they're going to do it. It's going to be interesting to see how this comes together next play. I can't wait to see how it works in football, number one, because, Walker, we're going to have all regions, all classifications using this PSR. And to see what happens in classes like 7A will be
Yeah.
very interesting to see how this ranks it out.
Yeah, I mean, when you take into account, who did we mention Buford could potentially play
Mm-hmm.
in the quarterfinals this year? Of course, 7A is like the SEC, so you're going to have massive matchups anyway. But in theory, if the regions had aligned themselves in terms of who was playing who in the first round and who was partnered with who, in theory, you could have had Buford versus Grayson as a second round game. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we all think those are the two best teams in 7A. Of course, we're playoffs play out here over the next 5 weeks. But you could have had that matchup this year where, in theory, the state championship game, what everybody would like to see be played in the bins, would happen in the second round or happen in the quarterfinals. I think the way that the new PSR is going to work out, you're going to save those massive matchups to guaranteed later
Mm-hmm.
in the playoffs, assuming that the teams do what they're supposed to do in the season and win their games, get region titles. Want to see those schools be seated higher and guaranteeing themselves to at least not see each other until the quarterfinals, if not later.
Yeah, and that again, yeah, I can't wait to see how that happens or how that kind of shakes itself out next year. And also, looking forward to see what happens on Monday at GHSA, meeting on the appeals for the region uh,
Yeah.
realignments and how many schools actually make their appeals and how many schools win the appeals, and then what's it going to look like in the regions that affect us here. When we say regions that affect us, it's our coverage area of 26 area schools, and of course, what is that? 22 of them are 23 of them are public schools. So
Yeah.
how is that going to affect us? And is it going to create, new matchups in region? It already has for the most part, but
Well,
will there be a surprise? You
yeah,
know,
we still haven't talked 3A. We kind of glossed over them because
yeah,
of
we
the
did.
split of Hall County. Um, Interesting with Union and Lumpkin, the two teams in our coverage area. We know Lumpkin elected to stay in 3A, and they they've said, okay, we're good with going east to Stevens, Franklin, Hart, and Elbert, or to going east. Yep. The question is, what does Union do? We know Union last reclass cycle elected to go over to the Northwest to play a North Murray, a Sonoraville, a Lafayette, schools like that. Uh, Rockmart, an interesting one if Union decided to go to the west. I think they're watching what Rockmart does closely. Of course, Barrow Arts and Sciences Academy, they don't have football, but they are in this region for all other sports. Hebron Christian gets thrown into that region as well. So the question, at least that I have, Bo, with Region 8 3A is, what does Wesleyan do? We know Wesleyan's played in that region before,
Mm-hmm.
played Lumpkin. They were actually in the region with Lumpkin two reclass cycles ago. Of course, not this past one. GAC was in with the Indians in Hall County and stuff. Wesleyan was there. a few years before that. So what does Wesleyan do? Because I can't imagine that Wesleyan wants to go to Haralson County for a region game. That is a long road trip for a region game. So what does Wesleyan do? Or does the GHSA approve Wesleyan to go even to Region 8 3A? I think it depends on what Union decides to do, if they want to go to the Northwest or if they want to stay in and have to make the trip down to Elberton, because Jeff Hart said in the text message thread on Monday when the regions were announced, how long of a trip is it from Dahlonega to Elberton? It's not nearly as long as Blairsville to Elberton. I can tell you that.
Well, if you go back to the last realignment, you look at that and you see what Union County did. They were placed in 8-2A and they jumped out of it and went to 7-2A with essentially the same teams that are. There are some differences
What
in.
is Rockmart in there right now?
Rockmart
I
is
can't
in
remember.
7-2A at this moment. So at this
Okay.
moment, you have Kahula Creek, Lake LFO, Murray County, North Cobb Christian, North Murray, Ringgold, Rockmart, Sonoraville, and Union County. So those are the teams that you have. Now, 8-2A, it landed currently right now. Of course, East Jackson moved out. But right now, 8-2A is East Jackson, Franklin, Hart, Hebron, Prince Avenue, and Stevens County. Now, this is the current region. This is not the new realignment. So if you want to make comparisons there and go back to what happened in the last realignment, Union did decide to jump out of 8-2A and go west to 7-2A. So did they like their 2 years in 7-2A? Did they like that? Again, it's picking which way you want to go, because Union, as you can see on the map, they are kind of Lumpkin's in there with them now, but Union's kind of up there by themselves. So they can choose whichever way they want to go. I mean, obviously,
Of
you know,
course, if the GHSA approves
if it,
any
yeah, if they approve
points.
it, obviously, if that happens. But again, I mean, you could see that happens again for Union. They could be like, look, we're out. We're going to go over to the new 7-3A, which is essentially the same without North Cobb Christian in there. So I don't know. That'll be an interesting question, to find out if Union is going to, and we'll see the appeal sheet whenever GHSA posts them on Sunday evening or Monday morning. But
Mhm.
regardless, that's a decision they have to make. Now, Lumpkin decided to stay in, as you said. There was some talk about them jumping up to 4A, but they decided that the best thing for them was to stay in 3A. So now that kind of makes that region interesting. But we didn't think that Hebron was going to end up in Region 8 3A, which is what happened when
Yeah.
it was all said and done. So um, would Lumpkin have any idea of wanting to go to that 7-3A?
Yeah, sources are
You know?
telling me they're good with staying in this region. They anticipated playing the four schools that I mentioned earlier around the 85 corridor. That's Stevens, Franklin,
Yeah.
Elbert, and Hart County. They thought Hebron might be thrown in there as well, and they're okay with that. Again, I think the real key here is, what does Wesleyan decide to do? I don't think Lumpkin is going to change no matter what Wesleyan decides to do. I think they're, based off what I'm hearing out of Dahlonega, they're staying in that region. I think what Wesleyan does is going to affect what Union does. And so I imagine that those two schools are in communication, or uh, communicating through a Lumpkin, through a Franklin Stevens, to try and figure out what's going on down in Atlanta with Wesleyan and what they're going to try and do when it comes to Monday.
But you've got it here, Walker, with the postseason ranking. I mean, just look at it. If Wesleyan does come into 8-3A, it's going to potentially help your PSR, because you don't have
Absolutely.
to go too far to find a team that's going to strengthen your PSR as Hebron Christian. Even look at Franklin County. They had a resurgence this year. Does that continue next year for them? Elbert County, we know year in and year out, they're pretty good. You look at Stevens County. Stevens County kind of had a lull this year, but still, you know, overall, they're a good program. So
Mhm.
your PSR is going to be up there. So you could see teams like Elbert, Franklin, Hart, Lumpkin, Stevens, and even a good Union program perhaps making it in the playoffs based
Yeah,
on the PSR. So
absolutely.
again, we kind of forget. a lot of times when we're talking, it's like, what is the bigger picture here? Obviously, region championships are great to get, but the big picture here is a state championship, and if you can get on that roll and you do get the good draw, perhaps you go deep into the state playoffs because you are battle tested in your region, and your PSR, no matter where you finish, you get into the playoffs. So that could work out in 8-3A if that indeed stays the way it is.
Well, and don't forget, if let's say Wesleyan doesn't win their appeal, so in 8-3A, you're going to have six region games to play. There's four non-region games that each team would have to schedule. Let's
Mm-hmm.
take Lumpkin for instance. You imagine that Dawson or that White County going to be on that list. You imagine that Dawson going to be on that list of non-region opponents. So there's two upper classification
Mm-hmm.
that Lumpkin would get to face. And then the question is, do you go and try and play a North Hall? Do you go and try and play a Chesta T? Because those are nice, close games that are going to get you good gets if you're the Indians. And I imagine that those four schools right there, Lumpkin, or rather Dawson, White, North Hall, and Chestatee would be very happy to play a Lumpkin County team because you would think that Lumpkin's winning percentage is going to be decent enough when it comes to the PSRs to where that part of the PSR rankings formula is going to benefit those schools as well. So the non-region games are going to be interesting, and we've talked about that as well. What do these teams decide to do when it comes to their non-region schedules, and how are they going to uh, try and get those non-region schedules to where they're going to be able to get wins, but also try and help their PSR rankings when it's all said and done as well.
Walker, you and I both know that White and Dawson are priority scheduled, right? Like
Hope so.
you know that's going to be it'll have to be on the schedule, right? Because those are Lumpkin's two biggest rivals. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Absolutely.
And then you've got on Dawson's side, if you look at that region again, you're gonna have what? Did I count five? You were gonna, yeah. You're
Yeah,
gonna have
five now,
five.
five region games. So
Yeah,
they'll each have to schedule
yeah.
five non.
And then you look over at 8-4A, they'll have four non-region games. So you're going to get an opportunity here, to really put together a good non-region schedule for a lot of our area teams. And
Yeah.
will we see a lot of these area teams crossing over? To obviously we'll probably get North Hall, Cherokee Bluff. I mean, it has to be on
hmm
the schedule, right?
North Hall, Flower, or rather Cherokee Bluff, Flowery Branch, we've heard's on the schedule.
we've heard that could happen as well. We've also heard that we haven't heard, but you would know that North Hall East Hall is going to be on the schedule. So
hmm
you're going to have a lot of these teams that kind of cross over regions to play each other just simply because it's natural rivals, it's good gates, and you're going to have big crowds, and it's just going to be fun because you have the opportunity now to play five non-region games, four non-region games, three non-region games. So this it's going to be fun to see the schedules come out too. I can't wait to see how many teams how many of our teams have new opponents
hmm
in non-region, and how many teams just stick with that good old rival non-region schedule. So that's going to be great for us. It's going to be great for radio if that happens, and we're rooting for that to happen, especially for that Bluff Flowery Branch game. We're definitely rooting
Yeah,
for that to be
if
a
we get
thing.
Bluff and
Like,
Flowery
come on,
Branch, that's yeah. Bring
make
it
it
to me. Let's
happen.
go.
Let's get that on the schedule. And if it does happen on the schedule, we will be there to broadcast that game. Guaranteed. We'll be there. I'm going to throw it out there now. So put it on the schedule whenever it happens. But yeah, so looking forward to all of that kind of shaking out to see where we end up. And then, we'll start pre planning for kickoff 2026.
Yeah, I mean, before we know it, like we said, next Monday, we find out officially the regions and what they will be, and then you'll get those athletic directors together to start making region schedules and starting with football, and that's just going to roll right into
Mm-hmm.
us getting ready to push out a kickoff 2026 magazine with a lot of awesome information in it, and you, that's the best part of the summer for me is getting to talk to the coaches and get fired up myself for an awesome football season. So it's while we're getting ready to start the playoffs now, and we'll start them on Friday night. uh, we're already thinking ahead to 26 because
We have to.
these new regions are a lot of fun.
They are. They are a lot of fun. It's going to be fun to see them kind of kick off next season if whatever happens on Monday. By the way, Walker mentioned, yeah, that off week last week, it was okay. It was still found myself on a Friday thinking that I should be somewhere. I missed
Absolutely.
my Friday concession stand hamburger, so I did miss that. And the rituals
We
that
didn't get to talk on the phone until
that's
12:30
right,
working website.
we didn't get to do that. So Friday, we're going to get to do that because we have a full
Absolutely.
slate of games for you, 12 games in the GHSA playoffs, and then I think Linear Christian.
Off
No,
this week.
they're off this
Gaps
week.
is
They play
next week.
next week.
Yep.
That's right. Gaps is next week. So we've got a full schedule for you. We're going to have a full pick'em show coming up on tomorrow. Unfortunately, I will not be able to make that one again. I'll be at some middle school basketball, so that'll be fun action for me. But we have a full show for you. Rance Gillespie from Rabid County is confirmed going to be on the show with you guys
Hey, there we
tomorrow.
go.
And we have to confirm our guest picker as well. And I'll get on that after we get off the show. But again, full Friday
Well,
night, Friday game night.
we're talking about playoffs on the field. We're also talking about playoffs
We're
in the
talking
guest
about
picker. I mean,
playoffs.
we've got a chance to crown a guest picker champion for this year, and that's at least the plan right now.
We've
So,
got 3 tied at the top at 10-2. And so that's Daniel, your bro,
yep.
and Coach Conley, and none other than Joe Dix. So we're going to try to do a little playoff here the first 3 weeks of the playoffs and see if we can get those guys in.
Not to mention dark horse dogs continuing
Dogs.
on where Caleb's got the lead coming out of the regular season, but the rules change a little bit. I don't know if you heard the Pick'em show last week, but we're going to double cover points. We're going to double push points, and you're going to get +5 added to the spread if you win outright. So everybody's still still in for a chance
Sounds
to
like
win the dark
fun.
horse dogs.
The dogs sound like
Including
fun,
Jeff,
though.
who is like 40 points behind right
Yeah,
now.
it's like you guys came up with this to catch up to Caleb.
I mean, you had to add you had to make it interesting, right?
Yeah, it does make it interesting. It makes
So I
it
mean,
very interesting.
what motivation does Jeff Hart have of making a dark horse dog pick by the time the shot clock runs out
Well,
if he
that's true.
doesn't have a chance to win?
I
So
heard he got shot clocked a lot last week or once.
he did. He
Yeah,
got shot
so
clocked. Yes,
perhaps
absolutely.
perhaps he won't do that this week. But make sure, folks, you tune in tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Check out the Week 1 Georgia High School Playoffs Pick'em show, as we'll have a full show for you coming up tomorrow, and a full Friday game night, starting with tailgate at 6 with Caleb, or just after 6, and then 3 games on our airwaves, as I'll be over at North Hall in the Mount Zion Jonesboro North Hall game. And then 5:50 will be over at Flowery Branch, Ware County visiting Flowery Branch in a really tough matchup there for the Falcons. And then over on 94.5 FM The Lake, Gainesville hosting Dunwoody. So 3 games as we do each Friday, and hopefully we'll keep that up for a little while in the playoffs.
And then we have a full scoreboard show after until 11 o'clock. Hardy Chevrolet scoreboard show. We'll go over everything that happened, what it means for the second round of the playoffs, talk to some coaches, and get you set for the second round of the playoffs next week.
Can't wait. Can't wait. And that's a wrap for today's realignment show. I'm sure Walker and I will be back with you sometime next week to talk a little about what happens with the appeals coming up on Monday at the GHSA. And if you want to check anything out on that, you can go to the website, accesswdun.com, and check out our stories on the reclass and realignment. And you can also see the full reclass document on there as well from the GHSA. For Walker and Bo, we'll talk to you coming up, Walker, tomorrow, me on Friday, as we say goodbye.